I love going on a road trip and stopping at those beautiful bakeries for scrolls. They look like little snails and they're delicious because they come in many different varieties, from good old classic cinnamon to jam scrolls. And that's what I'm going to be making, delicious jam scrolls with some sour cream. Now the dough recipe that I have is really easy to follow. 500 grams of plain flour, and when you're making a dough like this, it's a good idea to use a plain flour that's strong and high protein. It's fantastic to make pizzas and breads and doughs just like this for our little scrolls. So 500 grams of plain flour. For some sweetness, some caster sugar. And whenever baking, a pinch of salt. And then I'm just going to combine the dry ingredients together first. It's just very quickly. And then we can start adding the wet ingredients. Now, when you're making bread like this, you need some yeast. So I've got two 7-gram sachets, so 14 grams of dried instant yeast, along with some warm water. And I always like to feed it with a little bit of flour. This is going to activate the yeast. Now, in order for this to activate, you need to leave it in a warm spot in the kitchen. If it's too cold, it won't grow. So nice warm spot. And then when it starts to look like this, when it starts to bubble away, then you know it's ready. So this takes about 15 minutes. Now I'll place this into our dry ingredients. Now I'll add a little bit of olive oil, 2.5 tablespoons. Lid can go on now. And I'll knead this for about 10 minutes. I'm kneading it in my food processor because I'm a bit lazy, but by all means, you can do this by hand. Ideally, we're looking for a really sticky, bouncy dough. So once that's done, we're going to place it into a bowl. I'm just going to add a little bit of olive oil to the base of the bowl, just so it doesn't stick. I'll cover it with a little bit of Glad wrap. And then we want to place this into a warm spot. This dough is going to brew for about 1 hour or until it doubles in size. Have a look at this. Bread dough is such an incredible thing. It's doubled in size, it's fluffy, it's sticky. And now I have to ruin it because I have to knock it back, which is all part of the process. So I've just got a little bit of extra flour here, and I'll just place that on my board. And then also just put a little bit of flour on your hands just to give you a bit of grip. And then we'll take our dough out of the bowl. You can see it comes out nice and easily because we added that extra olive oil. And now we're just going to just very lightly knead it. And then I'll get my rolling pin and I'll roll this out into a rectangle. We want this rectangle to be about 5 millimeters thick. So just roll it and turn it. And when you're working with pastry, any type of pastry or dough, never move your body, always move the pastry so you can get that perfect shape that you're after. Just makes life a lot easier when doing this. That looks pretty good. Now for the fun part, which is getting the fillings ready. A combination of sour cream and some spices. So about 200 milliliters of sour cream. You can also use creme fraiche for this. And I'll just spice it with some cardamom and some cinnamon. Mix that up. And just so this doesn't go too watery when it's baking in the oven, add a tablespoon of flour. So just the plain flour that we've been using throughout the whole process, and then mix it in just to thicken it up. Now we'll just place this sour cream all over our pastry, leaving a little border because we are going to roll this, so we don't want it to come out of the sides. So with the back of a spoon, spread it out so it's nice and even. It smells so good with that cardamom powder and cinnamon. Great. And now for the sweetness, some jam. Raspberry jam, use whatever jam you like. I love this combination of the sour cream and the raspberries. I think it works nicely together. Use a good quality jam for this and dollop this around. You don't need to spread it around. I kind of like those little pockets of raspberry jam throughout. Being a little bit rough with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. So dollop that all over the cream. And now I'll put a little bit of flour on my hands. And now I'll roll this like a sausage roll or a Swiss roll. And I'm being quite loose with it. I don't want it to be too tight. Fabulous. Now we need to cut these into individual scrolls. Again, a little bit of flour just so nothing sticks. Just pop that onto our knife. And then we want them to be even. So we'll cut straight down the center and then in half again. And then if the knife gets a little bit dirty, just put a little bit more of that flour, wiping it off. Now I'll cut them in half one more time. These scrolls need to prove one more time so they go really fluffy, and I've just greased a 23 centimetre springform tin. It's almost going to look like a pull apart, which is how it should be. So I'll take the larger parts and have a look inside. Look how yummy that looks with all that jam and that cream. This is just such a great recipe. And we'll pop that into our tin. We'll just follow the tin around with the scrolls, allowing them to touch sides because we want them to almost stick when they're baking in the oven. And a few more just to squish in there. And the last one can go in the center. Perfect. These will now sit here for another 25 to 30 minutes or until they double in size again. Then I'll just place a little bit of olive oil on top and bake them in the oven, 180 degrees for about 35 minutes. I'm very impressed with these scrolls. They look gorgeous. I've allowed them to cool and it smells so good. So let it cool to room temperature before you take the collar off the springform tin. So I'll carefully take that off. Ooh, looks great. And now I'll take them off the base. We'll just scrape underneath it. Then we'll place it onto a plate. Looks like beautiful rose. And these are fantastic as is, but they're even better with a little bit of glaze. In this bowl is some icing sugar, and just to reiterate those spices that we used in the cream, some cardamom, a pinch, and a pinch of cinnamon, because scrolls and cinnamon, well, they have to go together, of course. And then just to bring this together, a little bit of milk, and we'll just slowly mix it. You really only need a small amount of milk because the icing sugar absorbs this moisture quite easily. So you just pour some in, bring in the sides so we don't get any lumps, and then keep mixing it in. And reserve some of the milk. By reserving some of the milk, we'll see if it needs a little bit more or a little bit less. Nothing worse than adding too much at the beginning and then it'll be too liquidy. So this is looking pretty good. It's getting quite glossy. And I'll add just the smallest smidgen more. And you know your icing is the perfect consistency when you can draw a line on the surface, just like that. All right, let's crown these gorgeous scrolls. I'm going to drizzle this over the top. Ooh. It's such a pleasure doing this last little bit. Perfect, all done. Cinnamon scrolls are delicious. Cinnamon scrolls with sour cream and raspberry jam, even better. All right, let's dig into these cluster of scrolls and just pull them apart. Woohoo! I'm in heaven right now. They're still just a little bit warm. Absolutely delightful.